Have you been struggling with repetitive, intrusive thoughts that you just can't seem to get rid of? If so, this video should be helpful for you. I'm going to share a simple hack that almost no one uses that will allow you to gradually be free from those repetitive, intrusive thoughts. Hello, my friend. I hope you are well. My name is Matt Tenney. I'm the author of The Magic of Mindful Self-Awareness: How to Stop Overthinking, Clear Your Mind, and Be Happy Almost All the Time. On this channel, I help people apply the practice of mindfulness and mindful self-awareness to be happier, less stressed, and more effective. I look forward to helping you as well, my friend. If you're struggling with repetitive, intrusive thoughts, you are definitely not alone. This is a very, very common issue, particularly if people are dealing with anxiety. What often happens when people deal with anxiety, especially if they end up having panic attacks as a result of anxiety, is that we tend to get really nervous and scared about the symptoms that we're experiencing. We think about those symptoms a lot. We'll even Google the symptoms to see what could possibly be wrong with us. And all of this is just creating more anxiety and increasing the likelihood that we're going to have another panic attack. So there are two basic extremes that happen when we're dealing with repetitive, intrusive thoughts that we'd really rather not have, especially if those thoughts are scary. We tend to either fuel those thoughts by engaging with them, going and Googling symptoms, looking up things related to the topic, talking to people about the topic. Or the other extreme is that we try to repress them or get rid of them. We try to drive them out. Every time they come up, we try to block them out in some way. We use some strong effort. If we're practicing mindfulness or mindful self-awareness or some other meditative practice, we often try to focus really hard on some type of object of meditation in an effort to block the thoughts out and get rid of them. Unfortunately, both of these extremes aren't going to bear the fruit that we're looking for. In the short term, sometimes using extreme focus to block thoughts out can be helpful, especially if it's done in a way that's not with real intense effort, but just focusing on something like the breath, for instance. But this is a very short-term solution just to get some type of clarity, some type of stability. Over the long term, if we are always trying to block thoughts out, repress thoughts, it's going to create more problems than it solves. So here are a couple ideas that can be very, very helpful. First is that there's a principle that kind of is very similar to anyone who's practiced martial arts, that we don't want to resist what's happening. Okay, so for instance, if in the martial arts, if someone's pushing me, I don't want to push them back. If someone's pushing, I want to pull. I want to use that energy to help redirect their energy to something useful instead of something negative like us pushing each other. The second principle that I'm going to go into in this video is how to build habits in a way that can help you overcome the tendency of fueling the thoughts. So two principles for dealing both of the extremes. Let's start off with habits. Now, for those of you who have not read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, please go read that book. That will go much more in depth into the very brief introduction that I'm going to give you here. But a core idea is, if you have any type of repetitive, intrusive thought, the first thing you need to do is stop fueling it. You need to do whatever you can to remove external stimuli that are fueling those thoughts. So for instance, if you are worried about a condition that you have, you need to create habits that will allow you to gradually stop Googling those symptoms, gradually stop having conversations with everyone you know about the symptoms that you're experiencing. And this is much easier said than done. You're not going to just stop this cold turkey, but if you take little steps and use the habits or the pillars of habit formation that James Clear teaches, you can gradually build habits that will allow you to be free from this. So here are just a couple simple ideas that you can implement right away. So for one, it's very important, if we're trying to build a new habit, to track our progress and feel some type of reward for what we're doing. Another key concept is to make it very hard to engage in the habit that we don't want to engage in. So I'm just going to use Googling symptoms as an example, but this could apply to anything. So obviously, if we're trying to break the habit of Googling symptoms, one easy thing to do would be to make it very hard to use our phone or a computer to Google the symptoms that we're experiencing. And there are some tripwires you can have for this. You can disable the search on your browser. You could, when you're not at a computer, you could make it a rule that you're only going to check your phone once an hour, and you're only going to check important things like emails or text messages. And then once you've created this, where you've made it a little bit hard to engage in the habit that you don't want to have, now you need to make it enjoyable to engage in the habits that you do want to have. So there should be rewards. And what you can do is you can create a tracker. So let's say, it's every day that you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish by avoiding Googling symptoms, or avoiding having conversations about your symptoms, refraining from engaging in those. You can track that. And every day that you are showing some progress, or that you've had a win, you should have some type of reward that makes it enjoyable for that to happen. And in fact, early on, you might even need to do that hourly. So if you go an hour without engaging in the bad habit, have some type of little reward, like maybe you get to watch a funny video that you normally wouldn't watch, or maybe you get to have some type of healthy snack that's not going to ruin your brain with a bunch of sugar, but it's still delicious. Anything, or going out for a walk, anything that you enjoy, anything that's pleasurable. So you're starting to create this virtuous cycle where you're engaging in a good habit and you're being rewarded for it. And if you're tracking the progress, that in and of itself actually is a reward as well. So that's the first step, is we need to stop fueling the external stimuli that are giving rise to this repetitive thought, or multiple repetitive intrusive thoughts that we're experiencing. And this is a huge element, a huge piece of the puzzle. This is why a lot of people like to go on retreats for a few days, because when you go on a silent retreat for a full day or a few days, you're removing all of the stimuli that are always stirring up the mind with all of these thoughts that we'd rather not have flying through the mind all the time. But if you're not able to take time off for a full day retreat or a multiple day retreat, the habits that we just talked, building habits like we just talked about, can be very, very helpful. And then of course, you can also create your own retreat just by engaging in some mindful self-awareness practice a couple times a day, maybe even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, 5 or 10 minutes in the middle of the day, 5 or 10 minutes before bed. And here's where the second principle comes in. So when you're engaging in mindful self-awareness practice, particularly while sitting still, there can be this tendency to want to say, well, I want this experience to be peaceful and quiet, so I'm going to focus really hard, block all the thoughts out, and try to get rid of them. And this is a recipe for disaster, particularly with repetitive intrusive thoughts. When we have a repetitive intrusive thought, it's very sticky, as I'm sure you've experienced. And we block it out, and it's almost like a rubber band. We push it away and it just snaps back, and then it seems like it has even more power when it comes back. So here's where we can use that principle of, instead of resisting, instead of pushing, we can pull a little bit. And in fact, we can even make it fun. So let's say I'm having a repetitive thought about how much I hate my boss, right? Let's just say my boss is really toxic and making my life miserable. And I keep thinking about how much I wish I had a different boss because my current boss is so terrible. So instead of trying to fuel that by talking to myself about, rationalizing why I'm right, or trying to focus really hard and block those thoughts out, what we can do is actually invite that thought to come up, and even take it a step further. And we could actually make that thought as objective as possible by being silly about it. So you could use some phrase that's silly with your inner voice. Like I'm going to use one that, this is again just for demonstration purposes, but I could just, in my voice as I'm sitting, or in my mind as I'm just sitting still, I could mentally note, my boss is just a stupid poopy head. And I'm using silly words on purpose, because what happens is, when we're in negative thought loops, we get very negative, and there's parts of the brain that are trying to protect us, right? The self-defense, the fight or flight parts of the brain are keeping us stuck in that defensive mode. Whereas if we can switch to some silliness and some laughter, we can break that, right? And so the idea is, if I just say, my boss is a stupid poopy head, and I just make it loud in my inner voice. In fact, you might even want to say it out loud if you're by yourself in a quiet place. What happens is, it's silly, it's ridiculous, right? And so a smile might appear, we might even laugh. And now what's happening is, instead of the thought feeling like it's stuck here and it's something that there's just no room around it, we just can't create any space around it, all of a sudden the thought is here, it's objective. It's almost as though we put it on paper, right? So it's, as soon as we voice that out loud and it's silly, now all of a sudden that thought is an objective object that we can see clearly or we can hear clearly. And as soon as we have that objectivity, you'll notice that there's space. And you'll notice that for at least a second or two, as soon as your voice goes silent, there is silence. The thought's not there. Now it's going to come back. And as it starts to come back, you could do it again. Like, oh, just thinking about how my boss is a stupid poopy head, right? It's objective again, and now you're just listening. Allowing the thought to be there exactly as it is. If it's there, it might be silent. And then there's this shift that we can make, where we just allow whatever residual thoughts are around that to be there, and then shift to being curious, not trying to ignore the thought, not trying to block it out, but then be curious about, well, what else is coming in through the senses? And what you'll almost certainly notice, unless you're in a very unsafe situation of some type, you'll notice that what's coming into your senses is very neutral, right? You hear sounds. In this case, I'm hearing sounds of birds. I can see green things around me. I can feel my feet on the ground. There's a little breeze hitting the back of my neck. These are all real world signals that there is no threat right now. I am safe. And so the brain starts to receive this real-time information. It's telling you that you're not under threat. There's nothing to be scared about right now. You are safe. Of course, the thoughts will come back. You go through the same process again. You get that real-time sensory data. Just being curious. You're not looking for anything particular, but just being curious about, what do I actually notice right now? Oh, there's the breeze again. There's the birds. What is the brain being told now? I am safe. And so are you, my friend. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have a question about the practice of mindfulness or mindful self-awareness, please subscribe to this channel and leave your question as a comment in one of the videos on the channel. I will do my best to answer your question or one like it. If you'd like a great resource for going deeper with the practice of mindfulness and mindful self-awareness, you might like my book, The Magic of Mindful Self-Awareness: How to Stop Overthinking, Clear Your Mind, and Be Happy Almost All the Time. There's a link in the description. Until next time, may you be happy and kind.